If you are a frequent listener to the podcast, you know that we have been sponsored by Fuji Sports for quite some time now. Whether you're looking for apparel, equipment, bags, or accessories, Fuji Sports has got it covered. Go to fujisports.com to see the latest selection of everything you need for your jiu-jitsu, judo, or MMA journey. That's fujisports.com. Let me take a minute to tell you about RŌL TV. If you're looking to take your jiu-jitsu to the next level and supplement your BJJ education, then RŌL TV has you covered. RŌLAcademy.tv has over 1,500 videos covering individual techniques, positions, and concepts, including seminars and workshops with top-level competitors and instructors like Chris Wojcik, Robert Drysdale, Aaron Hurley, Emily Kwok, and more. Whether you are a beginner or a more advanced student, RŌL TV is the online platform that can take your jiu-jitsu to the next level. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave a review wherever you do listen. This makes sure that we can continue bringing you the amazing guests and content that you have come to expect. Today's guest shares her insights on trust, vulnerability, and the challenges of asking for help, particularly in the context of jiu-jitsu. She reflects on her personal journey, the resilience she developed through adversity, and the importance of community support within her life. Here's the RŌL Radio with a first-place IBJJF Pan Nogi champion and head kids instructor at Crazy 88 MMA in Maryland, Vannessa Griffin.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live. Vannessa Griffin on the show. Vanessa, welcome. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thanks for stopping by and having this amazing conversation with me. How are you?
Of course. Thank you for having me.
What I like to start typically is I come across the different phrases that surface everywhere, and I would love to pick your brain on one, kind of just throwing out there and just starting this conversation. And I found this recently. We don't build trust by offering help. We build it by asking for one. What's your interpretation of that?
Can you actually repeat that?
We don't build trust by offering help. We build it by asking for help.
Yeah, I think that is interesting because at least from my perspective, being a person who is really difficult to ask for help, and I'm just very independent. I like to do things myself. I think when you ask somebody for help and you're, in that vulnerable position, it does show that you trust somebody to be able to help you, and it builds that connection, rather than, I do think that offering help to people gives a little sense of trust, but also sometimes people offer help for the wrong reasons or for different things. But I think when a person asks for help and genuinely is really asking for something, and then of course, something that's not taking advantage of somebody, that it shows that you really, that you really trust somebody and that you really need it, especially in a gym, a community. When you ask the upper belts for help, it shows that you trust their jiu-jitsu and what they are able to offer you, and it shows that you also care. So that's, especially in jiu-jitsu, that's a really big first step to building trust between athletes, teammates, coaches, and all of that. So I do think that's a very interesting quote.
Why is it so hard for students to ask for help? I feel like higher or more of a higher ranking environment there is in the academy, students, there was this hesitance almost. And it's not all the time. We always drive to create a very open environment. That's part of that community. But I feel like no matter where we look at, there is always this hesitance. There is this black belt who is like just higher than everybody else. And sometimes there's hesitance from students to ask or approach or reach out or connect. Do you have the same experience?
Reasons, I think from one aspect, I believe that from an ego perspective, a person might feel like they either want to figure it out themselves or get the answer themselves rather than going and asking for help, depending on the person. I think culturally, there's some gyms that frown upon lower belts, asking black belts to spar, asking them to drill, asking them for help. There's kind of in some gyms there's a very don't speak till spoken to type of atmosphere.
Old
Um,
school.
and then in general in life, when people grow up really independent, it could just be difficult to want to ask for help, not wanting to be a burden. So for that regard, there's some people like me. I often don't really like asking for help. I don't like being a burden. I'm getting better and I'm learning how to, ask for help when I need it. But I think that there's three different perspectives and or which a reason why a person wouldn't want to ask for help. And then, like I said, as far as it goes in the academy, it could be an ego thing or it could just be cultural. It really just depends on the gym and the person.
Why is it hard for you to ask for help? You said you like to figure things out by yourself, but we all know that that's the longer path, and sometimes it's just surrounding yourself by people who are better than you've done this before, and so on, makes things much easier, makes it the success much higher. Why do you find it so hard?
Because when I grew up, my mom worked a lot, and she was very independent. She kind of made a lot happen from nothing, and she was often gone a lot. So honestly, a lot of the times there was things I had to learn by myself. I mean, she's a great cook, so she taught me a lot of cooking. But there was still for me when she wasn't around, like trial and error, remembering it. There was a lot of stuff growing up that I had to figure out on my own. And it wasn't really until I got into jiu-jitsu when I learned, how to seek guidance and ask for help. I'm not saying my mom didn't give me any guidance or anything like that. She gave me plenty and she was great, but she was very busy, always tired. It was hard for her to um, balance work as much as she had to work with also, being around there for me. But she was, like I said, she was around a lot for me. Of course, she did a lot, but I know she was also busy. She was also tired. I could tell sometimes when she was tired, and I just, even if she was around, I wouldn't always want to bother her. So that was a lot growing up. And then I'm learning, as I go to the gym, how to ask for help, how to ask. Even now, I mean, in different phases, like especially being a black belt and competitor, you know, I you sometimes learn there's different ways you have to ask for help. Um, some people just want direct communication, like they just want you to ask them directly how to help. Some people want it a little bit indirect, like if you walk up to someone, you're like, "Hey, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this. What do you think?" Or versus, "Hey, could you help me with this?" There's different ways to learn how to ask for help as well. But like I said, for me personally, I just grew up really independent. My mom worked a whole lot to make things happen. She made a lot happen from nothing, and she figured a lot out on her own as well. But I'm learning now. I went through college, and I'm still working on like studying and learning and all of that. And asking things and asking for help now is a lot easier to me, just because the worst someone is going to say is no, I don't know, or no, I can't help you.
I mean, that's hard for us, right? Like asking for help and somebody rejecting us in a sense, saying no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the fear of failure, essentially, right? And oftentimes compared to jiu-jitsu too, like we are afraid to try things because they might not work. Yet, if we don't try it, we never learn. So it becomes this vicious circle, and very much so similar to what you're describing, right?
hmm
How old is you said that your mom was always busy. You were figuring stuff on your own. Do you feel that harder part of life, or the overcoming these obstacles in such a young age, gave you the resilience to become successful in jiu-jitsu on the mat? Did that give you
No,
the tools and
absolutely.
drive and
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was funny. Maybe a couple weeks or months ago, my coach had sat down and he decided, he was like, sometimes he gives speeches at the end of class, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna say something positive about all like the black belts in the room. And I was sitting there, and it was funny. I don't remember what the other people's were, but they were like super positive and super happy. Then he looks at me and he gets to me and he's like, Vanessa is really willing to suffer. And I like that that's mine. Not that I was offended, but I was just kind of like, that's such an interesting one where, he's seen me through a lot of bad injuries, through a lot of bad life events, through a lot of things. And, I waver in consistency and discipline a lot of times, because he also had to talk with me. He was like, sometimes you're just very undisciplined and you're very inconsistent. I was like, you're absolutely right. You're not incorrect, still, I'm 27 now, so I'm still dealing with different life circumstances and things like that. as I learned to navigate and figure that stuff out. But he was like, you're always willing to suffer, like he knows the things that I sometimes go through in my personal life and then injuries and things like that. And that's something that I've always kind of learned is to push through. But I also have the balance of, learning how to push through, but how to also rest and relax and, ask for help when needed. But yeah, I mean, growing up was pretty tough. I was fairly independent. There was a lot of stuff that I kind of had to figure out and do on my own, but not everything, But coming into jiu-jitsu, it is that balance of, hey, let's figure some stuff out. Because I think there's a lot of people in jiu-jitsu who you have things that you do instinctively that you don't really know you're doing in jiu-jitsu, and that's sometimes just things you have to figure out on your own. Like I do small little things in my jiu-jitsu that I notice because I do them a lot, but some people, when they're developing that, you don't always notice it. But then there's the balance of, entire systems and things. I had to really like buckle down and ask my coaches in the last probably like 18 months or so. And we've really been building out systems and focusing on that and how to study, how to reinforce them, when to drill, how much to drill, when to move on from something, and all of that. The structural type things of jiu-jitsu growth is something that you just have to ask for. But then there are things that, a lot of black belts nowadays, we just figure stuff out on our own, moves and different ways to do things. Like I'll end up in random guards all the time and I'm like, maybe this is nothing, but maybe it's something. I think I had like double sleeves, but I had like cross double sleeves yesterday and I was like, this is interesting. I don't know if this is real, but let's figure it out and see if it is. So but yeah, I mean, growing up really reinforced the toughness of the sport and how, I don't know, I just thrive in it. I have a great time. I love it. It's, not for everybody, but it's something that keeps me grounded and gives me something to do and stay motivated by.
You mentioned something interesting. From one side, it seems like there's this push forward to overcome the obstacles and challenges in life and on the mats. At the second side, you just told this story about your coach mentioning things about you about inconsistency. So I'm curious, what does this look like in your life? What does this inconsistency look like? Where is it coming from? What is he referring to?
I think, I've been doing this now. People always ask me, and at this point, I've lost track. I mean, once you hit like 10 or 11 years, you kind of just
you just don't keep track. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone, it takes me a good 30 to 60 seconds to recall how long I've been doing the sport now. But since like May 2011, so that would put us about 14?
Yeah, almost 14 years.
Almost 14 years, 13 and a half. And it's funny, there's a news article of me from the Baltimore Sun that's like hanging up in the office, and at the end of it, I think I was like 17 at the time, and my coach in it, he said like, oh, we haven't really had life challenges yet. And of course, like soon as that poster went up, there's different things like I move out, I go to college, I have, different things and a lot of things in my life personally that, not the best choices and not things that, just things, personal things in my life that didn't go great. Some things in my control, some things out of my control. And then sometimes that just takes a toll, takes me out for a little while. I had concussions, like really bad concussions for a while. I had a string of them for about 3 or 4 years. And that took me out for a while. I mean, I had to drop out of school. I could only train, I literally couldn't train 2 days in a row. I would get so nauseous and sick. So there was a time at that point where I couldn't train for a long time and I couldn't train consistently. And then, dealing with personal issues, just mental exhaustion. Like it's very hard to separate mental from physical exhaustion sometimes because they feel like the same thing. But that, hits me a lot. Personal things in my life that I go through. And then I was also recently diagnosed with Lyme's disease. So that's something that we've figured out that I've had for a long time, and we're treating it now, but it's something that like when you look back, you're like, oh, I wasn't just being dramatic. Like I felt horrible and wasn't training, so now that we have a handle on it and we know what's going on, that's something that that has affected me for a long time that I just didn't know, like I said, things that are in my control, things that aren't. Just being in it for a long time, it's hard to stay consistent for 14 years. I mean, I haven't even taken a break really. I haven't disappeared. I've always worked here. I've been consistently working here since I was about 16, so I've been working here for 11 years. I had one other job before, but this has been my main job since then. Climbing up the ranks of employment here. But so I haven't like I've people I know, they've taken a year off, a couple months off, a couple weeks off, but I've been here consistently. But as far as training schedule, yeah, I mean, mental exhaustion, physical illnesses, things like that, of just injuries and things like that have taken me out or not giving me the opportunity to be as consistent. But then again,
How do you
there's some
deal?
things that were in my control.
How do you deal with these obstacles? So like I'm sitting and you're like you naming things one after the other. Like it seems like there's a lot of passion behind you wanting to do jiu-jitsu or be on the mat, being involved, helping people, being a leader. At the same time, seems like, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, but life keeps throwing curveballs at you from young age. But like I didn't even know about some of these things that you just mentioned here, right? So like, like how do you overcome this? Because majority of people, 99% of people would say, screw this. Like, forget about all this. Like, this doesn't have to be that complicated. Like, I can go do something else. But yet you're almost stubborn, almost, don't want to give up. How do you overcome these things and how do you manage that?
You broke up a lot just then a second, but I think I got the gist of what you were asking. I think honestly, like I said, I've been working here, so this was my first job. My coach has always tried to give me opportunities to be here, and he's very good at that. He's very, I see it even still now, and I kind of do the same thing where I give the athletes here opportunities where I'm like, you can come work as a kids coach, you can be an adult coach, you can do something and be involved in the community, and community is huge. And I think that that's something that there's gyms and there's, like especially weightlifting gyms, like there's kind of a culture in a community, but it's not as tight knit as something that you can be competitive in and really grow. The organization that my coach and the owner here has built is just incredible, and it's something that's deeply rooted in the community. When I started, he wasn't even a black belt, he was a brown belt. I didn't even know that a black belt in jiu-jitsu existed. In my brain, I just accepted that brown belt was the highest, and I was like, all right, whatever, that's fine. I didn't care, because I just didn't see black belts when I first joined. And now we have, we just had a big promotion ceremony on Saturday, and now there's like 12 black belts sitting on the wall. There's so many different types of people here too. There's lawyers, there's doctors, there's nurses, there's all types of different professionals, and people who can always give you advice and people who are always around. So the community has always kept me in. People have, most of my like family and my best friends are here. And then teaching the kids, that's a huge passion of mine. Something that I've always been pretty good at. I've always been good at dealing with kids and talking to kids. And when I was about 19, I took over the kids program here, and we've built it to be what it is now. We have 3 different locations. The kids programs running in all different locations, summer camps, day camps, aftercares. We have a whole lot of things here. So there's always something to keep people in if they choose to, and especially me. Because we have a leadership team at the gym now. There's 6 of us, and we probably now have about 50 employees total, and about, over like 1,000 members across all 3 locations. So it's a deeply rooted community. So I think that passion and motivation sometimes waver, but there's always a reason to be here. And like I said, I've never really taken a break, but I've always been here, 6 days a week for 11 years, teaching the kids and helping out there. And building the program out. So it's something that I love doing. I love jiu-jitsu and I love coaching kids. And because both things are kind of in the same place for me, plus, a family community, all of that has really kept me in, because, when I did have issues, concussions, life problems, medical problems, injuries, the people here were always there stepping up to help me out. So I think that's something that, just helps keep me in. So the community here is huge. The opportunities here, the reasons to be here. There's more reasons to be here than just doing jiu-jitsu.
You mentioned a lot of these little things here. As you're there, you work, you contribute. Some might find it difficult to be at the academy but not train. Contribute in different ways, but at least from the conversations I've had with people, sometimes sitting on the mats and watching others train while you cannot, it becomes, heavy. challenging. Did you have the same experience, or just the fact of being in that community and being helpful, being involved is enough for you when you need to take those breaks?
Yeah, for me, it's more than enough. It's sometimes good. I mean, 14 years of jiu-jitsu is a long time to just be consistent. So while I never really took a break from the community, or never really um took long breaks from, I mean, I've taken breaks from training, but like I said, I've still been in the community. I've still been here. Sometimes I'll still stay and watch class. Um, and we have morning classes and night classes. So for me, and sometimes you just need that break physically. It's just, it takes, jiu-jitsu takes a toll, especially still having been a competitor for now, a serious competitor for 10 years now, and before I started doing IBJJFs and making it a real career, I was still competing for 2 years. I think my first competition was like February 2014. So 11 years of training and competing and traveling, it takes a toll. So sometimes it is kind of nice to have physically a break from it. And because I've been doing it for so long and I'm still pretty young, I don't really ever feel out of shape. It can be hard to go back into the grind of 2-a-days and all of that, of course, but since I've been doing it for so long, I adjust really quickly. So it's not something that's very discouraging. I've had all types of injuries, so I kind of know how to rehab them when I need, but it is sometimes nice to take a break. Once a year I go visit family in Rhode Island for a week and I just do nothing. So that's always nice, just a week of nothing over the holidays. But it sometimes is just nice to have the break. I'm not like super obsessed to the point where I need to train all the time. So every once in a while, especially off season, like when we're running summer camp, I'm here all day, every day. So I leave by 7 and the classes here start at 7. So I'm usually home at night, and I'll train in the mornings when there are morning classes, but it won't be every day. But I mean, doing something for so long, it is important to have some sort of break, whether it's just a physical break from being on the mats, a mental break from being in the building, even if it's a couple days. But yeah, I enjoy the breaks and I appreciate them more now as I, take on the sport for years and years to come, and I keep doing it for such a long time. But I've never really had that, issue where I'm like, oh, I need to train. I'm always like, I'm okay taking a break. I'm fine. I've been doing it for so long.
Good for you. Good for you. That balance is important. Do you ever envision life without jiu-jitsu? Like, does that ever cross your mind that, like, this is all you do?
It's hard to. I mean, it'll always be a part of my life, especially like, I feel like once you're a black belt, it's like, it's that thing. It's like, once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. Once you're a jiu-jitsu black belt, you're always a jiu-jitsu black belt. You always have that in you. Even if you stop for 10 years, if you go back into it, I imagine it's probably like riding a bike. You'll be a little rusty, but I think it's always something that, I see people come, they bring their kids and they're like, oh, I was a purple belt, blue belt, black belt, 10 years ago, but they still remember it and they still bring their kids into it. But for me personally, of imagining my life without jiu-jitsu, not necessarily. Will I compete seriously for the rest of my life? Of course not. But will I ever not do jiu-jitsu? I mean, I feel like I'm pretty cemented here in Maryland. If the opportunity arose to move and there wasn't any jiu-jitsu, would I be okay? Maybe. But I think for right now, it's definitely something that I'm just cemented here for now. But yeah, I don't know. That would be interesting, because now I've been doing it for close to half my life, or about. So
yeah.
It's not like I'm like 8 years old, did it for 4 years. I mean, I'm 27, doing it for almost 14. So it's something
you've been doing it for half of your life.
Yeah, that's a big half.
Oh yeah. That's why I asked, because we don't think about these things. When you are in the grind of every single day, showing up, and especially when you're loving, time flies. I mean, and then we don't reflect on it sometimes. We just, letting it go. But then, time passes by. That's the only thing that's certain. Always time passes by. Take me back to the beginning of all of this. You moved quite a bit at the beginning when you were young. The beginnings were a little rough, weren't they?
Yeah. So, yeah, I was born in Rhode Island. My father passed away when I was 3, so we lived there for 3 years, and then when he passed, I don't really remember much of it, but my mom moved us here to be close to my grandmother. That ended up not really working out, so then I kind of spent the next couple years back and forth, like going to Rhode Island so that she could work and get on her feet, and then going back to Maryland to live with her, and then summers in Rhode Island, and back and forth for 12 years, which was great. I love my family in Rhode Island. I still see them. They're not blood related to me, but I mean, they raised me and they helped raise me. So they're my family, essentially, for all intents and purposes. And I used to live a mile down the street from where I am now. There's trailer parks about a mile away. And I've always been athletic, always loved sports, always loved being active, very active kid. I was still in the generation where you went outside and played for hours and you went home when the street lights went on, So
that
I was
doesn't
like at
happen
the tail
anymore.
end of that. Generation, I had the library walking distance. I had friends. We would all walk around. But, as you get older, like people, the kids start to do things. They have their own activities. They don't have as much time to go play outside. And you also get older. So I think I kind of reached a point where I was just bored. I didn't really have anything to do. And I was spending like hours on my computer playing video games just in my room. And then my parents were finally like, you're going to need to find something to do. It was hard to do organized sports because my parents worked a lot. So it was something that like if we didn't have a schedule and we didn't know what was going to happen from the beginning, because back in the day for the, rec leagues around here, you would sign up, get all your gear, and then they would give you a schedule. But like for us, that didn't work because we would need to know when the times were. So something like martial arts was perfect because you had a cemented class time. And because it was so close, I could walk there. So I walked like a mile to the gym and a mile back home all the time.
How old were you when you stumbled upon jiu-jitsu?
I was 13, but I was like almost 14. I think I was 13 and turned 14 maybe.
Was that the first time you interact with jiu-jitsu, period?
Yeah.
What's the first class like? First of all, whose idea is this? Yours or your family?
It was mine. They told me to find something, and I actually was interested in kickboxing at first. And the gym, we do Muay Thai, kickboxing, and jiu-jitsu. So I was actually interested in kickboxing, but I think at the time, the only thing they really offered for the kids, my age at least at the time, was jiu-jitsu. So I was like, I'll just try it. And I remember, I mean, it was very interesting to me from the beginning. I think the first day we were doing like closed guard kimuras, and kimuras is still one of my favorite moves. And I remember
walk me through that day. So you were about to walk in. Do you remember any of this? Like, what's your recollection?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I think like the first couple days were jumbled, but I do remember. So I walk in.
Are you scared? Are you concerned? Or are you excited?
I was always a pretty stoic kid, so I don't think I had any emotions at all. I don't think I was nervous or excited. I was just like, all right, well, we're here. Let's try it. But I was greeted. I think at the time they would give you like rental gis or thin gis, just for free to have the class. I remember going in the locker room, changing. It was funny because I remember sitting on the couch. So when I started, the building that we're in now, they didn't actually have it yet. We were actually like across the street, same business park, but across the street in a different building. So I went in there, and it was funny because Julius, my coach, obviously, 14 years ago, he was a lot younger. I remember I was sitting on the couch, and he was walking around with some of the staff members, and he was like pointing at stuff that he wanted. And at the time, I was like, oh, this must be the interior designer. That's kind of cool. And then I remember going to class. They had us running around, and I was athletic, so I wasn't really out of shape. I was fine. We warm up, we run around. They teach us this closed guard kimura. It's like a basic class for teenagers. They teach us this kimura. We go spar. Of course, I want to spar on the first day. I get absolutely demolished, which was fun. And then I remember my mom watched maybe like 20 minutes of it, and then she was like, I don't think she cared. She was like, if you like it, do it. But, she watched like 20 minutes of it, and then I remember she went to the lobby, so I just went to the lobby with her. I was like, I like it. I want to give it a try. She signed me up. And I remember the next day I was so sore that I actually didn't want to go back. I had a great time, but I was so sore the next day I couldn't move.
But wait, I thought you were athletic. What happened to that?
But with the jiu-jitsu, like the amount of muscles that you have to use, and I wasn't, because I would play like backyard football and like run around with the kids, but like moving another person and then getting beat up, that was different. So I wasn't like out of shape or like out of breath, but I was sore. And so I remember, I think honestly, if my mom didn't sign me up that very first day and it was like, hey, we spent all this money to do it, I don't even know if I would have went back because I was so sore. But then I went back the second day and I was like, oh, I'm cemented. This is great. This was like, I was all about it.
What was the best part?
And I remember like 4 months later.
What was the best part behind that first class?
The best part behind the first class? I think it was the sparring, because I remember I always have these phases, or I had these phases where, I would see people doing moves and I would be like, I could never learn all that. There's no way. And it was just basic. I mean, I didn't know what was going on at that point. Like, a kid had picked another kid up from the clothes garden. I was like, wow, that's crazy. How did they know how to do that? So I remember, I'm pretty sure I sparred, but I think they probably had me watch the first round. So I was like watching all the other kids. There might have been like 8 or 10 of us in the class. And I remember being overwhelmed, like, wow, I don't even know if I can learn all of that. But I was so fascinated by it. And I had phases like that every couple years where, like, then I got to like green belt and I was watching like blue and purple belts do these advanced systems. And I was like, how could I ever learn that? Then I was a brown belt watching black belts fight and just do the smallest, craziest micro transitions. And I was like, I could never learn that. And now here I am. And I'm like, yeah, I can learn whatever. But I was so fascinated by the sparring. And I think that's why I love competing so much, because I was just fascinated by, the sport and being fast paced and how you have to react and all that.
What about sparring is so intriguing?
I think it's like I am big on like puzzles and like logic things, so I really like I love Rubik's cubes. Of course, everyone who knows me knows I'm obsessed. Like, I'll play with Rubik's cubes on the mat with the kids. Always been interested in jigsaw puzzles. I love chess. Not that good at it, but I really enjoy it. So it was kind of like it's like a physical puzzle. Like, I'm obsessed with puzzles. Like, I have a huge bookshelf, half the books on there are like puzzle, logic, mystery, whatever. And in jiu-jitsu, I mean, it's literally human chess. It's like, you make a move, your partner makes a move. Like, there's always a reaction or something in there, and it's just fascinating. I mean, it's like you have to use your body to move somebody else's body. It's very physical. It's very, as much as it is physical, it's also like you kind of have to have a sort of intelligence, like a kinesthetic intelligence. You have to be able to react. So you have to be able to react with the correct move. You have to be able to identify patterns in your opponent, moves, tendencies, speeds. So just how complicated and intricate it is, it fascinates me because, like I said, I love puzzles and I love figuring things out. So jiu-jitsu, that's probably one of the reasons I've always done it and been there for a long time, because there's always something new to solve. Even as a black belt, one stripe, I'll have my second stripe in like a year. There's always something new to figure out and find, and problems to solve. Like, I train with the kids that I used to coach. Like, they're older now, they're juveniles, and like some of them are my main training partners. And as they're learning new stuff and they're learning modern jiu-jitsu, I'm having to like figure out how to respond to it. And it's just fascinating. I mean, like I said, it's like chess. Like, once you do like 5 or 6 moves, there's like infinite possibilities. So it's the same with jiu-jitsu. No 2 matches the same. There's always something different. There's always something new to figure out. So I think that's the most fascinating part about jiu-jitsu to me, is how I just kind of treat it like a puzzle. And that's, I've always been fascinated by puzzles and figuring things out.
So you continue training, young age, you start around your teens and you go through it. At which point do you bridge into the adults? And there's a reason why I'm asking this. At which point you switch from this teenage-like training from perhaps, kids classes or teen classes into the actual adult class training?
Yeah, my coach picked me up pretty early. Because I mean, now like the juvenile scene is crazy. I mean, the amount
It's insane.
It's so crazy. My coach, my coach and I talked about it because we were discussing like competition requirements and what we should have here. And I asked him, I was like, take me at 16. Would we have invested the same? Because I didn't do juvenile. It wasn't really a big thing when I was like back in the day. Like, there was juvenile, but we just couldn't afford it. It wasn't a thing. So I just competed locally. And then in adult, when I was able to start, like, I was like 17, finally working, making my own money. I started paying for my own tournaments and going to IBJJF, but I didn't do it till I was literally like my first year at adult. I was 17. So it wasn't really a thing back then. And I remember I asked my coach, I was like, at 16, the skill level I was, would we have invested in my juvenile career knowing what we know now? And he was like, absolutely. Like, take 16-year-old me and place me in the world of today. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. But I remember like he picked me out pretty early, and I think he noticed pretty early that I was invested because I have like an addictive personality. So once I like something, I'm like obsessed with it. I'll Google, like if I really like a TV show or like an anime, I'll sit there and I'll like Google it and look for all the details and all the Easter eggs and alternate theories and all of that. So I was very like obsessed with jiu-jitsu, and I was obsessed with people doing it with me. So I'd always tell like my peers, like, hey, you should come train with me and do these classes. And I was always there. As soon as I could be there every day, I was there every day. So he picked me out pretty early and had me do the adult classes by the time I was like 14 and a half, probably, before I
How
even was ranked as a yellow belt.
how do you deal with that change? So there was and now you coach. Now you're an instructor for the kids. So answer this. Give me two perspectives. One, where was your mind at that time, but now how you see the perception of it as an instructor. There is a big difference between how we process information when we are a teenager and once we become 18, 20, 25, and so on. Like the comprehension levels are different. But also there is the physicality of it, right? So in teenage years, we just starting to develop. We might have the same size, but there's no mass. The muscles are not developed the same way. Even the agility and flexibility is not the same, right? So when we go through these stages of development, mental and physical, how do you process that information? For a teenager to come into an adult class and having a sparring session with adult men or female, doesn't matter. It is intimidating, and oftentimes, that introduces a challenge, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was crazy, so I just went into the adult classes and I was fighting whoever and whatever.
Is that the case? You just didn't care?
Yeah, I'm a very like nonchalant type of case. Like it's funny because yeah, I mean, when I was like, it was something like I said, I had been through a lot in my life by that point. So like doing jiu-jitsu tournaments and doing jiu-jitsu and doing adult classes, I was like, this is whatever. Like this is in my brain, like the struggle that I had faced before that point was so much more immense than like going to do an adult class. And I think back in the day, my mentality of jiu-jitsu when I was in the adult classes was just like, just learn as much as possible and just do it. Because when you're starting out, like there's a different balance between like early career and there's like skill development tier and then there's like professional tier. It's like early skill development. It's like train as much as your body will allow you. And for a teenager, I was training like 3 to 4 hours a night. Like I still went to like nowadays kids are dropping out of school to do jiu-jitsu, but that wasn't a thing when I was in school. So I was in high school. I would do the whole day. I would go home, pack my stuff, and immediately go to the gym. And I was training like I think back at the peak time when I was really starting to get into it. I was doing like a 5 to 6 o'clock adult intermediate class. And that was when we still had the building across the street and we were like transitioning over here. And I remember running across the parking lot at 6 o'clock to go do like the advanced mastery kids class. So then that was like 6 to 7. And then there was a point in time where there was like, I think 7 to 8 or 7 to 8:30 adult classes. So then I was doing that too. Then there was a time where there was 8:30 to 10. So some days I was training from like 5 to 10, 6 to 10, even 7 to 10, or like 6 to 9:30. So the schedule was always changing. But at that point, I was just training as much as I possibly could and just taking it as much as I could. I'm a very fast learner.
Do you ever get discouraged? Do you ever get discouraged with the fact that people are bigger than you, stronger than you, more developed than you? Like I mean, you are still a kid. I mean, that's the bottom line, And
oh yeah, no, never. Yeah, when I was a kid, like I remember Miss Kathy. She was she just got her brown belt this weekend, but she was training really heavily when I was around, and she used to beat the mess out of me. And I remember like I used to like get so tired of and frustrated that I would just like stop moving and hunker down. And that was something that I did. Like I had bad habits, and I was so tired of her beating me up. So like sometimes I had that, and I remember like my teammates will describe it. One of my teammates who's a purple belt now. And now we train really well together. But back in the day, he said like you would like grab something and then let go and like fall over when I was like a teenager. And then he took like a year off because of an injury, and he came back and he was like the difference in a year, like developmentally, I think probably like 15 to 16 or 16 to 17, whenever he was gone, he was like, that was huge. And so like each stage kind of had a different thing. And then, like now most of my training partners are men. So, and that's always kind of been a thing. I had more females to train with, but I rose through the ranks really fast to become one of the top females here pretty quickly. So a lot of my training partners have always kind of been guys and always been men. And I noticed like as I get better every year, I can kind of almost beat like a new group of guys in the training room. And even still sometimes like I'll still go back and forth with a lot of guys. Like there's a guy here, Dave Z. He's a awesome criminal defense lawyer. Me and him go at it. It's like cats in a trash can. Like he'll be like trying to pass my guard, jump on me and throw me and choke me, and then all of a sudden I'll be on top passing his guard. So I've always kind of had that thing of like most matches are going to be tough. And now that like, you know, I am, because I've been doing it for such a long time, like everyone is like, you're so strong, you're so strong, you're so strong. And so, you know, now I train with mostly guys, and like sometimes, you know, they get the best of me. Sometimes it happens, but a lot of the times, like I'm able to kind of hold my own. And most of my training partners now are men, and they kind of have to be men. Like a lot of the females right now.
Has that ever been
like
has that ever been a problem for you? The fact that most training partners are men and they might physically outpower you, or like many women, that's a hang up for many women. Like want to start, first of all, when women walk into the academy, we know that there's an intimidation factor, right? No matter how we slice it, it is a male dominated sport. Women presence is growing, but there are significantly more men. So for women to find themselves in that environment is difficult for many reasons, right? But physical differences is a big one. Have you ever found yourself in the point where that was difficult for you?
Yes and no. I think around COVID time, like it was hard to find training partners because like people were taking breaks. Like the people who I could train with just literally weren't around. So I was training like, you know, I'm a middleweight. Probably around COVID, I was probably sitting around like 160 pounds, and my main training partners were like 180-pound grown men. So like it wasn't fun. I was sucking it up and doing it, but then like physically too, like again, like having done it for a long time and then having to fight men is like, it does take a physical toll. And there are some days where I tell my coach, I'm like, I gotta just fight women today. I literally can't do it. Like my knee hurts, my back hurts, my neck hurts. I just can't do it today. And those are rare. Because my boyfriend now trains at the gym, so like he knows that sometimes like I'll tell him like I'm hurting today. So like sometimes we'll have a light round, and then some days we try to kill each other. So it's like understanding like how your body is and how to deal with it. I mean, I guarantee like 90% of the high level females in the sport, most of their training partners are probably men. You know, besides the ones who are like at big teams, like you know Dream Art and whatever the other one is with the circles around their thing. I don't know, the new Fratress, like they have high level AOJ, like they all have high level black belt females and higher level females, and they all have a nice diverse room. I'm sure they're still probably getting rounds with men because you should and you need to, but I would guarantee like a large majority of women like me who aren't on huge teams, like your training partners are probably dudes. And it's like, it is a balance of like, there are some dudes who I won't go with because I'm like, I know if they're in competition mode, like obviously like all of my injuries I think have been from sparring with men, which it's unavoidable, but there are some times where like I notice patterns where like, all right, I'm getting hurt with you a lot, we're going to take a break and I'm going to go over here with these people and train over there. So I mean, learning how to, and being a black belt, I have a little more power, so I'm not like a blue belt where I'm like, I don't want to train with these people. I'm like, I'm not training with them because I'm like scared, because I don't care, I'll fight whoever, I'll get beat up, I don't care. But it is a thing of like, you do have to listen to your body and you have to recognize patterns. Like if you're getting hurt or injured with somebody a lot, avoid them and go with safer people. Like I would rather go with someone who's going to beat me up but not be aggressive than go with someone who maybe I can go with and go back and forth with that might injure me. So it's that balance of like, it can be intimidating, it can be a lot. There's some days where I'm just fighting dudes for an hour and a half and it's hard, but I mean, it's made me who I am today. It's made me very strong. It's made me very like competitively ready. Like I go from fighting men for 90 minutes and then now I'm fighting females my size, my skill. It's just, it makes it mentally, it makes it a lot easier. Where it's like, and I mean, the women are still tough. I'm not winning tournaments right now a whole lot, but like the intensity is different.
Well, and you're right. So like, you know, for examples, I had a conversation with Adele Farino and then like Dorothy Dow. Some of them, absolutely, and all of them say the same thing. Like that, none of this changes. Like, yeah, their ability to find training partners in their weight is hard. Like the only partners they have, or you know, most of the partners they have, is men. But at the same time, they are mentioning what you are mentioning. That creates this mental resilience, this mental toughness, where they still need to make adjustments because women compete differently. But that resilience of training with men really allows them to overcome some of those big obstacles. What is the biggest difference between the way how women and men compete and train?
I think it's interesting to ask. So I would take it from two perspectives, and I think I'm pretty sure my worst losses, like Brianna St. Marie absolutely threw me into the air 3 months ago. And I would guarantee she probably trains with men the most. My easier matches, and they're closer, I kind of know who trains with who, because everyone's on social media, you know.
Yeah.
Brianna St. Marie, I think Brianna St. Marie and Adeli, they train together, but not as much as probably they would like to. But the way that Brianna St. Marie threw me into the air and held me down, I know she trains with men. It's different. I used to fight Rafaela Gedges and other people who I think my worst losses are literally from women who have to train with men and don't really have a lot of other choices. And I noticed some of my closer matches or less intense, matches where I know I can win or are winnable. I mean, all of the matches are winnable, but just speaking from intensity wise, I think my worst matches, Elizabeth Clay, destroys me in Nogi. I know I literally watch her have to train with her husband and men. It's different. When I grab them, I'm almost I can literally feel it. I'm like, oh, you train with men. And some women I grab and I'm like, oh, you probably have a decent amount of women to train with, just because the intensity and the amount of strength and muscle and what you have to use when you train with different people is very different. And we're strong. Women are very strong. There's a lot of even the juvenile Pyron is one of my old students, but I train with her every single day, and she's finally getting to the adult division. She is also strong. She also trains with a lot of guys and always has. So I can sometimes kind of feel the difference in intensity. Women who have to fight a lot of men in training, they're more willing to kind of just fight head on, and they're a lot stronger. Whereas I can kind of feel the difference sometimes with women who have more women to train with. It's just different. But and then training with men, I sometimes feel I think men are sometimes a little bit faster and have more upper body strength. So the guards, I was literally talking to one of my teammates the other day, and I was like, I fight everybody in the room very different. There's some people who I have to pull you into my close guard and try to beat you up because I literally just can't hold you down. There's some guys where I have to get underneath the legs. I have to play double sleeves to even have a little bit of posture breaking or getting close. Collar sleeve on a man is hard. It is so hard. But on a woman, I'm I can sit here and play collar sleeve, double sleeves pretty easily.
Is that because of physical? Is that
you
because of the physical attributes?
Yeah, I mean, I literally almost every man in this gym can literally just grab my grips and just stand straight up on me, and it's always something okay, now I learn. Now I need to get underneath the legs and deal with that. So it is an interesting challenge, and I think that women should train with men because you learn how to adapt and what to do. That's why now I have a really good underneath the leg system, and I am getting under legs because I have to. I can't always fight a grown man upper body to upper body. I really like pressure passing because it's more control of the legs, less as much I can shut down the upper body a lot better with the pressure passing rather than trying to run outside and outside pass a guy who's probably going to be faster than me. Just genetically, he's going to be faster. And I just prefer the pressure passing style, but it's an interesting dynamic. And I think honestly, training with men has made my jiu-jitsu as good as it is because I've had to figure out different things. If an opponent is stronger than you, what do? You have to play this rather than this. And like I said, when I grab a woman, I can almost often know who she's training with.
Yeah, it creates a very interesting dynamic, right? Because so which one would you say is more important to women? Is it to train with women only, or is to train with men? Because it seems like there is a trade-off that takes place.
Yeah, I think I mean, me, I'm not, right now, obviously I'm hoping that I have a good season and I win some tournaments, but I haven't been in the last couple of years. But I do think that training with men has I think it's essential. I think that you need to, especially because, I think right now, I think women are catching up to the evolution of the sport. but obviously we didn't have as many opponents and we didn't really get started in the sport as early. So I think we can be a little bit behind in some measures to men, but I think that we're catching up very quickly. And I think that one of the reasons that we're able to catch up is because we have to train with men. So like now I have like 10 guard systems because like half of them I would only have if I was training with women. Like I get to sit here and play collar sleeve on you and tie you up in double sleeves, but then when I go with men who's going to stand straight up on me, I'm like, oh, now I'm forced to do like a lower body entanglement. I'm forced to get my close guard a little bit better. So I think it is for women essential to be at a high level to also train with men because it's just a different problem to solve. And I think it's going to help the evolution of women's sports too to almost be higher because like I said, like there are a lot of men in the training room that I can beat. A lot of them can also beat me up, which is nice. So it's actually kind of nice because if I was a man, I would be having a really hard time with training partners in my gym just because like I think the trend of our competition team is like we're a little bit smaller. We don't have a whole lot of like huge big guys, and if they are bigger, they're masters. So like our adult competition team is mostly lighter people. So for me, it's perfect because like my best friend, one of my best friends, Chris, he's a black belt. He just medaled at all of the major Nogi Grand Slams, and he's always been a great training partner for me. He's a roosterweight guy, but strong as however. I never in my life have been able to beat him in a match ever in my entire life. Like I scored on him maybe 3 times. So that's like a really good match for me. But if I was like a big grown man, like if I was a middleweight man, like this poor guy, like it would be a lot different if I was like a big grown man. So it's like it's a little bit nice being a middleweight female because I can train with a lot of guys. I can also train with a lot of women. And I think it has really helped my jiu-jitsu evolve. It has really helped my jiu-jitsu evolve to a certain level that I think would be different if I was like only allowed to or only could train with women.
Let's pivot this just a little bit. You've been teaching kids quite a bit while you are coming from being that teenager, we have a visitor.
Yeah, my coworker is here in the office. She's good though. She'll be. You're fine.
She wants to join us in for the conversation. So you are coming out of the teen program essentially, right? This is how you started. This is how you've grown up. This is how you developed your jiu-jitsu game and who you are as a personality. Now you are in the position of the leadership and you are guiding some of those teens. What is the biggest differences that you see in the last decade or so when you are the teenager versus what the teenagers are developing today?
I was just having this conversation. It's funny that we keep talking about things that I was just talking about, but it is a lot different nowadays. Like I think the culture of kids and what teenagers are is a lot different now than it was when I was a teenager. Like I said, I was in the tail end of the generation. We went outside to play. When the street light came on, you had 5 minutes to get into your house, before you got in trouble. And nowadays, I think kids are a lot more organized, whether it's like with screen time where they're just on tablets all the time or like it's really hard to get a lot harder to get teenagers to go and do things now than it was 10 years ago. I mean, teenagers are teenagers, but our teenage class is the most inconsistent when it comes to attendance. Like we literally had 0 the other day. The next day we had 11. Then we had like 5, so they're very inconsistent. And I think the culture today is to be a little bit more soft than it was 10 years ago. So I know we're having a hard time like getting them to be motivated, but the ones that we do get motivated, I mean, they're fully dedicated. I just promoted 2 kids to blue belt and they're some of the most dedicated kids that I've ever seen. Like I've watched them grow up from like 8 to 10 years old to now 16, towering over me. So it's like once you kind of figure out the age group and you get them to commit, they're committed. But a lot of teenagers today, it's hard to get them to do anything, hard to get them motivated. A lot of parents always tell me they're like, my kids fight me to come all the time. I was like, yeah, but when they come in, they're fine. They're just fighting you because they want to stay home and play video games. Like, ignore them and make them come in.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioning this because we see the same thing in my academy. I mean, it's that teenager consistency is definitely in question right now. Which one do you find more consistent, girls or boys?
Ooh, I think the girls are more consistent when I get them. I do still have more boys, but I do notice that it's kind of a mix. It's kind of like if I get the girls, they're consistent, but there are a lot of girls who like I don't see very often. The boys can be a little bit more consistent overall, but then like the higher level boys I get, they're sometimes like they have other stuff to do, or they're just like, I just don't want to come in, you know. But the girls are usually like they all want to like hang out with their friends too sometimes. So they're like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
come hang out with my friend and drill with my friend. And the boys are like, well, we can hang out. We'll just go stay home and play Minecraft on Discord. So it's kind of a mix. Like I think the girls have a tendency to be more consistent when they're higher level and then less when they're lower. And the boys I think are a little bit opposite where it's like I'll see the boys a lot, but then when they're like committed and higher level, they can be a little bit more inconsistent.
We've talked about quite a bit today, from your early life to some of the struggles and challenges to going through the jiu-jitsu ranks and competition, and now being a leader and standing in the front of the class and being an example of some of those young individuals. What is the biggest lesson that jiu-jitsu gave you overall? One simple thing that you took away from all of this?
Definitely how to consistently evolve. With jiu-jitsu, you have to keep evolving, you know, like as a coach, especially like this year I had to sit down and really like study the Pan Kids, and really be like, okay, you know, because I had Pan Kids champions. I was producing Pan Kids champions like it was nothing years ago, and now I'm like I'm having a hard time, and it's like as a coach you have to realize and understand like the sport evolves, like the age groups of kids get better, and some age groups of kids aren't as good as they used to be, or vice versa. And you have to like, and I finally was like, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm just gonna study these kids. Like I'm just gonna whoever the Pan Kids champion was from each of the kids divisions that I have to like watch next. Like I have a whole list. I've studied them of like what they do, and we're not far off. But it's more of like, okay, just as a coach, how do you balance different techniques with wanting to learn a lot? Like you have to evolve. This last year I've been studying nutrition a lot. I want to become like a nutrition coach and one day hopefully go back to school to be a dietitian. And something that jiu-jitsu has taught me is how to learn and how to study. Like I spend at least an hour every night studying nutrition to some benefit, and I know how to quickly get a lot of the information. Like I can read really fast now, I can take notes really fast, I can absorb a lot of information very fast. And if you want to be at a high level of jiu-jitsu, you have to be able to learn. You have to always evolve. You know, the sport is very different. Every 3 or 4 years, there's like new systems you got to learn. There's new things that you have to do to be able to keep up. And that's something that I learned, especially like this is my like 5th year competing at black belt, or 4th year, probably, I don't know, 4.5, 5 years competing at black belt. And it is different than when I even first joined black belt. So you know, all the losses that I've endured over the last like 4 or 5 years have taught me it's like, okay, now it's time to like sit down and it's like, what does your game need? What do you need to learn? How do you need to learn it? So, you know, I wasn't the greatest student as a high school, you know, in college. You know, I was very much like C's to get degrees, and for that you have to prioritize. But now I've really learned, like if I went back to college today, I'd probably get straight A's just because I've kind of learned how to learn and how to evolve and how to be, you know, become better in all, you know, different factors of your life.
Why do you think that now you would be more successful with that versus before?
Because I think I've learned how to prioritize. Like when I was in college, my priority was jiu-jitsu. So I was like, as long as I was passing the classes, I was giving it the bare minimum. And I wasn't really interested in what I was studying. And honestly, I probably wouldn't be super interested, but I think I would know more how to balance and how to study and how to do things. I was just joking with my private lesson teenagers the other day, and I was like, yeah, I didn't read any book they gave me in English class, and I didn't study anything. And I was like, I just passed, you know. But now, you know, I've been very interested in studying nutrition. It's something that I've also been very passionate about learning. And so I think there were a lot of classes back in the day that I didn't care about too much, but that now I would have taken an interest in and like really learned about it, really read about it, really studied and done a lot of that. And over like, you know, the last I've graduated in 2021, so I've been done with school for 4 years. But now I'm like, okay, I love reading, I love learning. Now I've learned like what I want to study, and how to study and how to get a lot of information done very fast. Like I finished a whole weight cut certification course in like a week or two. I'm starting a whole new like nationally accredited nutrition course, and I'm like flying through it when I have the time to do so.
Well, good for you. Seems
yeah,
like
so that's
you're
something that I'm
on a good
actively
path.
working on now.
there is no question about the fact that jiu-jitsu is your life, whether on the mats, in the office, community-wise, being a leader, being a supporter, and, it plays a huge, huge role in your life, who you are. Have you ever thought about the fact what would happen if the first day you didn't sign up? If the second day you were too sore and your mom didn't take you back? Have you ever thought about what would you be doing? Where would Vanessa be?
I have no clue. I always think maybe I'd be in the military. Seems like my speed. If I didn't do jiu-jitsu, something like, I don't know, probably doing something that's just as difficult if I wasn't. But I'm also a big believer in things happen for a reason. So I think that, like I said, I was born in Rhode Island. There's not really a whole lot of jiu-jitsu in Rhode Island right now, but then I got moved to Maryland. Then I got moved a mile away from the gym that I made my entire life. So I think all of that happened for a reason. So I do sometimes think maybe what could have been, but then I also think I think everything does happen for a reason. Not every little thing, but I think big things, path crossing, all of that stuff happens for a reason. I do think that there's a grand design. So sometimes I try not to have regrets or look back too much. And I think I found jiu-jitsu, of course, for a reason. I think that it's something that I'm doing that I think it's like I said, not being able to do sports as a kid. I love football, I love baseball, I love all those other sports, but not getting to be able to do them and just waiting for jiu-jitsu to happen, I think was always meant to be.
Well, good for you. Not many people find passion in their life. Not many people find a mission to make an impact or to help others. And it seems like you found it early on, and you keep pushing through it, and you continue learning to have balance between personal and business, and continue evolving. That's pretty clear. That evolution is a big part of what you do, and at least from this conversation. Listen, we've been at this for an hour at this point, so I appreciate everything that you were able to open up and talk to me about. But if anybody wants to connect with you directly, if anybody wants to follow up on some of the things that we've talked about and dig in a little bit more into your story, or perhaps learn from you, where are you available? Where's Vanessa? Social media, websites, anything anywhere?
My Instagram is my major probably hub for communication. I get messages and questions from a lot of people all the time. That's my biggest way to connect with people. So my Instagram, Griffin BJJ. I'm almost always on my phone if I'm not studying or reading or something else. So I always get messages and I answer them pretty quickly. But and I check my Instagram. I don't get notifications from a lot of things, but I do check my Instagram a lot. So if anyone had any questions, wanted to reach out, say anything, then that's usually where I connect with people the most.
Well, and I'll definitely make sure that all the links are in the show notes, as we always do. So if anybody wants to connect with you, that it will be right there available for all of you guys. Vanessa, thanks for being here. Thanks for spending the last 60 minutes or so with me and chatting, and more importantly, opening up, because it seems like the life keeps throwing curveballs, and you keep pushing forward, and that resiliency, that being just pushing forward, being stubborn almost, really got you to where you are. And, I'll be sitting on the sidelines and watching as you continue evolving, continue growing as an instructor, competitor, and making impact on all the others. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everything that you do.
Of course. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.